Hey kids, well I mentioned in a previous video that I'd like to get a hold of some Liberty Defense ammo for my KelTec P15. Why? Well, I've got this super light carry gun, why not pair it with some super light carry ammo? Well, lucky me, I was able to get my hands on some. So in this video, I'm going to talk first about shooting it and the results, and then I'm going to talk about some testing I did on this ammo to see how it's made and what the heck it's made out of. So if you don't care about the P15, you can skip a bit. Now, the only place that sells Liberty ammo near me hasn't been able to get it in for a while, at least not in 9mm. Oh, but they've got tons of it in 380 and 40. Anyway, I happened by there recently, and lo, they did have some 9mm Liberty ammo, but not the kind I was hoping for. I really wanted the civil defense ammo, which is in 9mm is 50 grains and traveling at around 2,000 feet per second. Now that's less than half the weight and almost double the velocity of normal 9mm ammo. It also claims that recoil is reduced somehow, but the shop didn't have that stuff. So instead, they had this other crazy looking stuff called Liberty Overwatch, which is 72 grains and moving at about 1,700 feet per second. Now, that's still heavier and a little slower than the civil defense ammo, but it only puts out about 10 more foot-pounds of energy than the civil defense stuff, which is nothing to write home about. So what is the deal with this ammo? Why is this a thing? Well, on Liberty Ammo's website, they have a crazy story about how this supposedly came into being. The short version is that Special Forces groups unnamed from somewhere tested the civil defense ammo and said it didn't penetrate enough. So Liberty made these heavier rounds to penetrate more and cause, and I quote, maximum organ displacement, or MOD. Now, how accurate this story is, I have no clue. It could be that they were contacted by the Navy SEALs to make this stuff, or it could be based off a drunk conversation someone from Liberty had one night at a hipster bar in Pittsburgh from someone who says they used to be in the Dutch Special Forces. I mean, I have no idea. But whatever the truth of the matter is, this was my only option, so I got it. Which, by the way, was not cheap. For a box of 20 rounds, it was about $35, which is about $1.75 per round. Yikes! So I bought 2 boxes. The first order of business is to test it in the P15. Now, I was fairly certain this ammo would feed okay because of the shape of this bullet. I found over the years that hollow points with this curved shape that mimics the normal contour of 9mm ball will feed more reliably in more guns. The cone-shaped defensive rounds that are a bit more commonly seen today are more often the ones that might cause feeding issues. Now, that's just a general observation of mine. You may have different experiences, but whatever the shape of the bullet, I would never put defensive rounds into a gun that I hadn't tested first. So, off to the range to see what would happen right off the bat. I did notice a big difference between this ammo and the 115 grain Hornady I also had on hand. The Liberty stuff was hot. It was so hot, I got halfway through the mag and found the P15's grip texture had imprinted itself pretty solidly into my palm, so I put on my Harbor Freight shooting glove of excellence to tame it down a little bit. So first off, this was great. No feeding or ejection issues of any kind, but I wanted to confirm that this stuff was harder recoiling and that it wasn't just my imagination. So I loaded a mag staggering 2 rounds of Liberty and 2 rounds of Hornady, and you can definitely see the difference when I'm firing, and it was also easy enough to feel that difference. So with the function test passed, what do I think about shooting this? Well, I may have some unusual things to say compared to most other people on this subject. Now, I'm of the opinion that the ability to accurately land hits in a shorter time is superior to more powerful ammunition. A statement which is sure to send 10mm fanboys into a fit. I can hear them typing angrily now. If you search around, you can find a number of videos about a study that someone did that concluded that 22 long rifle and 45 ACP had the same effectiveness for the purposes of self-defense, or something like that. Without going off on too much of a tangent, in terms of terminal effectiveness of different types of ammunition, you basically have 2 categories, pistol calibers and rifle calibers, and they're not even close. Choosing between pistol calibers is like choosing which of the new kids on the block was was the best musician. No matter how animated you are on the subject, it probably makes less difference than you think it does. But back to the subject. Overall, I think I slightly prefer the 115 grain Hornady because it has less recoil and I can fire it faster and more accurately than hotter plus P stuff like this Liberty ammo. My opinion is that with these smaller, more difficult to handle micro-compact or subcompact guns, emphasis should be given to the defensive ammunition that you can control the best. 3 well-placed shots is better than 1 hit followed by a miss. That's my opinion, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for it in the comments, but while you're down there complaining about what a backwards moron I am, try to also come up with a new and creative way of describing my wet noodle arms without using the words wet or noodle. Anyway, with all that said, what I'm likely going to do is to keep this Overwatch stuff in a larger, easier to control gun like my nightstand gun and stick with the 115 grain Hornady in the P15. But hey, you can do whatever you want. So with functionality confirmed, what about the other major claim to fame this ammo has, that it's lighter to carry? Let's find out by how much. I will say that just handling a single round, you can feel it is light. With 16 rounds and my aggressive concealment holster, the total carry weight of the gun with 115 grain Hornady is 26.1 ounces, or 740 grams, and the 72 grain Overwatch comes in at about 25 ounces or 709 grams. So as far as reducing your carry weight, it is making a bit of a difference, but I think the 50 grain civil defense ammo would likely make a more noticeable dent. So I put some numbers together here in Excel showing how much weight you'll be saving with 50 and 72 grain ammo over 115 and 124 grain ammo. The most weight you can save, obviously, is by switching your 124 grain ammo to 50 grain ammo, with an estimated reduction of 2.7 ounces for 16 rounds. Now, that would be a noticeable weight reduction. Now, in my case, I went from 115 to 72 grain, and we did shave off a little over an ounce. So the weight reduction is real. It's just going to depend on what you're starting off with. Now, aside from that, this ammo is very weird looking. The case is blackened, it doesn't appear to be magnetic, and this bullet is very bright silver colored. As I was looking at it in the camera, I thought it looked a little weird, so in order to find out what is in this stuff, I had to sacrifice 1 round so I could cut into it and do some investigating. But before I bisect this, I grabbed a microscope. Now, if we could look deep down inside this hollow end here, I see what look to me like machining marks. I can see them up this inside wall as well as the back end of the bullet. And I think I see them a bit here on the outside as well. It's just super weird. So I sectioned the bullet in half so we could see what is on the inside, and it looks like a copper bullet with another coating on the outside, which we'll look at in a minute. But inside the hollow point, this definitely looks like it was drilled out. Now, if that is the case, then drilling further down into the bullet will reduce the weight further, likely giving you the 50 grain civil defense bullet. So I stuck a piece of this into an ion mill so I could see the bulk of the bullet and the coating. Then I stuck it into an electron microscope to do some energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy with it. The bulk of the bullet is obviously copper, so no surprises there, except that one thing I do see is in this copper, there are these small bits of sulfur floating around. Now, overall, it's a very small amount, like around 0.25%. Weight percent, which is practically nothing. I mean, the reason I say it's strange is that sulfur and copper don't get along very well, and normally you wouldn't want them together at all. But in such small quantities, I'm not really concerned. I just don't know why it might be there. The coating is what we're really here to see, though, and the EDS tells me it's nickel. And from the images here, I measured it to average about 4.9 microns thick. So the nickel coating is going to provide some corrosion resistance to the bullet, so that's good. But a copper core bullet with a nickel coating is also going to be more expensive than the usual lead core and copper jacketed bullet. So as for how this is made, my completely uneducated and most likely wrong guess is this. These copper bullets are machined to the correct shape and weight, and then the bullet is given a nickel coating, possibly through electroplating. But as I said, I have no idea. If this bullet is machined, as it possibly appears to me that it is, that would explain why the cost of these things is so high. I don't think I know of any other commercially available bullets that are machined like this. If you do, let us know in the comments. So while this was informative, I think the more interesting part of this exercise here is this case. So I also cut it up, did some ion milling, and here's what we got. Now, most cases are made out of something called cartridge brass, which is about 70% copper and 30% zinc. There's some leeway in there, but that's generally what we're working with. In this case, we've got 75% copper and 25% zinc. That change in composition moves it from cartridge brass and to an alloy called Prince Rupert's metal. Yeah, the same guy who made those drops also had his own metal, and it's this. Apparently, he also had his own cube, too. What an interesting guy. Anyway, Prince Rupert's metal is also very gold-colored, and it can even be used as fake gold. The real question is, this isn't cartridge brass, but it's close. So why is this alloy being used in this case? Is it cheaper than cartridge brass? Is it easier to source? Does it have some properties that make it better for this particular application than regular cartridge brass? These are all questions that you will get no answers to in this video because I have honestly no clue. But if anyone does have a theory, let us know about it in the comments. So this case isn't gold colored, so there must be some more coatings involved here. And it turns out that yes, there are. We can see in this backscatter image that this top layer, which is mostly nickel by the way, appears to have multiple smaller layers inside it. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I thought this was only going to require some quick and dirty microscopy to get the info I needed, so I did some really sloppy ion milling, which is why this edge is chewed up and really gross. And my good EDS detector is in the shop right now, so I couldn't get really into the ultrafine detail here with these layers. A couple of things that we can observe here, though, is that this layer is a bit thicker than the nickel layer on the bullet, at about 6.5 microns. And it also contains about 9% phosphorus. Now, that is super important information, and it is telling us that this is most likely a material called E-nickel, which is a type of coating that can be deposited on parts, but doesn't require an electric current like electroplating does. Now, while that's good to know and all, it doesn't really explain the black coloration of this case. It should be super bright, shiny silver. Well, on top of this layer is a squishy-looking something of a layer about 700 nanometers thick, which is very thin, and my rather sloppy EDS results are showing a higher concentration of phosphorus in this layer rather than in the large layer below it. My suspicion, which again is completely based on nothing, is that this case was possibly heat treated to oxidize it in such a way that it turns black. What treatment would that be? I have no clue. The only other thing I can really say about this case is that there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of these cracks in the nickel coating. You can see pretty clearly they are going all the way from the surface down to the brass. So, given some extreme environmental circumstances, could this nickel coating fail to completely protect the brass underneath? Maybe. Will it cause any problems with the functionality of the gun? No. But with that said, I mean, these cracks probably shouldn't be there. One final question I have about these cases is why did Liberty make them black instead of bright silver colored nickel like most other defensive ammo, and the civil defense ammo even? Well, if you'll recall, this line of ammo is made for Special Forces operators, and you don't ever want the ammo inside your gun to give away your position, so it has to be dark and non-shiny, unlike the bullet. And that is probably maybe true. I have no idea. So hey, if you're from Liberty Ammunition and you're watching this and something you see here doesn't look right, like the thickness of these layers or the compositions of any of the things we're talking about, it's different from what you're expecting, then hey, drop me an email and we'll see about getting you some actually good analysis done so you can track down those issues. Now, I don't see any issues except those cracks in the nickel layer on the case, but hey, what do I know? Overall, this is some really interesting stuff. I would prefer to have the civil defense stuff to try it out in my carry gun since it weighs less and should recoil a bit less than this Overwatch stuff. But I'll take it, and its MOD capabilities for now. Thanks a lot for watching. Stay safe and have fun, kids.